Hey all, this is Baruch Levi, Rabbi B. I cannot find a quiet space in my entire house, so I am coming to you live outside of my house. Hopefully nobody will find me and um, distract me. So I'm just getting all set up here. So I want to share some thoughts about Passover. It is upon us in a couple hours here, and for those in Israel, it's already upon you. We're having a Seder tonight. We have gathering of friends and family around the table. And normally it's in person, but as everybody knows, there's nothing normal these days. So we have a virtual Seder. Tonight we have one for probably 30 of our family members. Tomorrow night we have one with my brother, my spiritual brother, Reverend Randy Caldwell. And he and I are doing one for mostly for his community. He's got a very large Christian following, and so it's an interfaith Seder. Anybody and everybody's welcome, but the bottom line is it's going to be kind of more of a learner's approach, and certainly welcome to everybody. So that's tomorrow night. You can check the Facebook page group or my website to get more information about that. What is the Passover Seder all about? I mean, I have been asked this multiple times and I've spoken about it before, but this is one last opportunity to talk about it with you all right now. I'm just fixing this here. About that. So anyways, got too much technology. You know, I spent literally 2 hours, probably like a lot of you, setting up the technology in my house for tonight's Seder, tomorrow's Seder. We got a big television, 55-inch television on my table. I got fire engines going by. Hang on, just give it a second. Whenever a fire engine goes by or a police car, whatever, I kind of take a moment, I stop and I send my love and my prayers to wherever it is they're going, because we're all going through a lot and some of us are going through even more right now. So it's always a good mindfulness opportunity to stop and to offer somebody a blessing. So all the technology is, God willing, taken care of, and we are going to gather around the table tonight. The question is to do what? That's where I feel like we get lost in the weeds, the details of Passover. There's so much preparation. We're supposed to get rid of our chametz, our leavened bread products, types of grains we're supposed to get rid of from the cupboard, certainly from the fridge, from the freezer, from both fridges, from both freezers, from the car. You vacuum anything and everything. There's something really bad happening right now. So again, let's just take a moment and send our love and our prayers to whomever that is. Sending them energy. It's really, I think, an important thing to be doing when you hear the sirens right now, because it's so easy to get caught up in our own world, and we need to really get past ourselves. And that's what the Seder is about. It's about getting past ourselves and looking backwards. We go back to the stories of the Exodus and the slaves, the Israelites who were enslaved, and the liberation of them. How did liberation come about? So it's interesting. Most people think it's simply a tale about freedom, and it is. But how does freedom happen? When we read about the Israelites, a very famous moment when Moses comes to them and says, to Pharaoh, "Let my people go," and to the Israelites, he says, "Let's get going." What does it say? It said they could not hear him for kotzer ruach, their shortness of breath, and they were in hard labor, avodah kasha. They couldn't hear. That's the point. They couldn't hear because they were so anxious, scared, fearful. They couldn't accept words of consolation and liberation. And I think about what we're going through now is fire trucks keep coming past my house. There's so much fear. There's so much anxiety. So how do we liberate? How does Moses liberate the Israelites? By telling them stories, by reminding them of their past, of their greatness, right? It's a process, and bringing them on this journey. And so what do? Thousands of years later, we gather around the Seder table and we tell stories of our past and our ancestors' greatness. I just made a video on this. You can get it on my website. You can, I think, see it here too. I posted it in a few places, but it's a video about the greatness from which we all come from, the greatest generation. I talk a lot about these days my grandpa Jack, who was part of the greatest generation, like many of your loved ones. and reminded me of self-sacrifice, self-transcendence, courage in the face of fear, feeling the fear and doing it anyways. He went and served in World War II. He contributed mightily, put himself in harm's way. And talking about in this video also the greatness of those who went from the camps of the Holocaust to the land of Israel and made a life in a home in the land of Israel against all odds, against harsh external conditions, whether it be natural or whether it be man-made, terrorists and armies telling them to go back to where they came from, enduring wars, and yet, we call them the Chalutzim, the pioneers, because of that self-sacrifice, that self-transcendence. We're part of great generations as Jews and as Americans. And both are near and dear to my heart, and I draw on both for courage at times like these. Talk about in that video, in times like these, there have always been times like these, says Paul Harvey, and there have always been times like these, in many cases worse times than these. And so we look back on those and we remember them not as history. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs says it's not history at the Passover Seder, it's our story, right? The difference between memories and history is that memories are ours. They're present, they're personal. History happened to somebody else sometime else, but memories are ours. And so we look to the greatest generation, we look to the Chalutzim, the pioneers, we look to those who came before us and inspired us, not as other than us, but as us. And their stories become our stories. And so tonight we gather around the Passover table to share those stories, ancient historical stories, but seeing them as our story, and then telling our personal tale. Over and over in the Haggadah, which is what we read from around the Passover, the Seder table, telling the story. This year it's virtual. I have a PowerPoint Haggadah. We are reminded to tell the story. Over and over and over. And to the point where Haggadah literally means to tell the story. The word Passover in Hebrew is Pesach. And there's a midrash, a teaching, that says, what is Pesach? Peh is a mouth. Sach, sicha is speaking. It's the mouth that speaks. What is Passover? Passover is the holiday that you open your mouth and you speak. And what do you speak? You speak words. But words are powerful. Words are, as humans, in many ways, it's what we are. It's what we have. It says in the beginning that there was logos. There was the word. And this word logos also means meaning. I'm a practitioner of logotherapy, Dr. Viktor Frankl's therapy. Logos and meaning are the same thing, and truth. And so when we take words seriously, we realize that stupid saying. Remember that stupid saying? Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. Isn't that the dumbest saying ever, right? If you've lived any amount of life, sticks and stones are nothing that can break your bones. Bones heal. Words can destroy you. Words can be devastating. How many of us carry words, wounds from our childhood, decades, half a century ago, of hurt that we just carry with us and we can't let go? So words are things. Words are real. Words in Hebrew, the word word is davar, and davar is word, but it's also a thing, because words are not nothing. Words are something. It's interesting. What is in the Passover story? What does Moses put into? Pop quiz. It's put into a teva. And teva is it's an ark, right? But it's also a word. It's another word for word. So it's an idea that words, stories, narrative carry this little boy, even though he doesn't fully know who he is, because he's being raised by Pharaoh's daughter and in the house of Pharaoh. At least the backstory is that he was being told stories by his mother and by his sister and by the women, the female Israelites, who kept the narrative, the story alive. They kept hope alive in this young boy and reminded him of who he was. And those words were not destructive, they were constructive. And that's Passover. Passover is about becoming conscious of our words, paying attention to our words, the words that we've used to tear down, to break down, to hurt, and not just others, but ourselves. Right? How many of us destroy ourselves with our words? Most of the words we speak about ourselves are we wouldn't say about somebody else. Maybe they're not articulated words, maybe they're in our head, but 90,000 thoughts a day, something like 3/4 of them are repetitive, and most of those are just repetition of negativity. At a time like this, what do we need? We need words. of construction, words that build us up, words that fill us up. Passover, Pesach, opening your mouth and speaking those words, not just historical words, but your words, right? Grandma, Grandpa, Bubby, Zadie, Mom, Dad, brother, sister, friends, sitting at that Passover table, sharing your words of liberation, of salvation, the things that you've been through, you've endured, you've overcome. We need to hear those stories now more than ever before. We need those words. We need to repeat over and over. People say all the time to me, you repeat the same words over and over. Prayers. Prayer is just repetition of words. So what? How many times can I listen to my grandfather's tales and love them? Right? We listen to them because they're good for us, and I want them. If I could have my grandpa back at the Seder in a heartbeat, I'd take it. With his worn out stories, I could finish better than he can. But there's something powerful in repeating those stories, repeating those words. Even if you think somebody knows them, it doesn't matter. Say them again and again and again. How many times can a parent tell a child you love them? As many times as you possibly can. A child cannot hear those words of love and inspiration too many times. It is not possible. So Passover isn't just about the maddening cleaning that we are all doing. I just escaped. That's why I'm outside. Hope nobody sees me. Took a little breather. Pharaoh has to let me take a break now and again. Don't tell her I said that. So we get caught up in the doing of Passover and we forget the being of Passover. And the being is being present to our family, to our friends, to our loved ones who gather around that table to speak words of hope and inspiration. Again, now more than ever before, we need those words. Telling our parents' stories, our grandparents' stories, our great-grandparents' stories, our ancestors' stories, and realizing that those are our stories. That's mother's milk. That's what we've come from. And so we go back for the next few hours on the Passover Seder tonight and tomorrow night, and we immerse ourselves in those stories and share those stories. I've shared this many times, but it's really the central thesis of my work as a rabbi, guiding other people. A person dies two deaths, once when their body dies and once when their story dies. There's nothing we can do about someone's body dying. I mean, ultimately we can do what we can and then it dies, and that's the way it is. We're mortal. But there's everything we can do about our loved one's story. We become the guardians of the story, our loved one's story, right? It becomes up to us of whether or not they die a second death. To me, that's ultimate meaning. That's purpose. That's powerful, right? To be the guardian of my loved one's story. Wow. That's a mission, a sacred mission, a duty. And that's how I think of the Passover Seder. I'm the guardian of this sacred story, this story that has kept alive generation upon generation. And that's not just, it's not about Jews. It's a universal story. It's why African Americans turned to the Exodus for their narrative, a narrative, but a driving narrative through the civil rights process, through slavery, and then later on through civil rights, because it's a universal story about the power of stories and liberation. It's why the founders of this country almost made the Exodus really the central symbol of this country. And it was a very important story to the founders of this country. It's all throughout American tradition. The Liberty Bell has words of not Exodus but Leviticus everywhere you go in this country, because it's a Judeo-Christian founded country based on this particular story of Passover, of the Exodus. And so that's what we do for the next 2 days, and then the remainder of the Passover is an 8-day holiday here in America, 7 days in Israel. And we immerse ourselves in stories of liberation and inspiration, and that's what I'm excited to do. I hope and pray that all of you have a chance this year, like never before, Jewish, Christian, anybody, to tune into a virtual Seder. There are so many cool Seders happening this year virtually. You're welcome, I'm sure, to all of them. You're certainly welcome to mine. Again, tonight, family. It is a closed deal. Wouldn't want to subject you to the mishigas, the craziness of my family. I say that in all the holiness and respect that every family has, their own mishigas. And so we will tell stories tonight of liberation, redemption, and hope and healing. And then tomorrow night, a lot of communal Seders, so you'll be free and invited to join my Seder with Reverend Randy Caldwell, my brother who's a minister, a reverend, and has got a big online following. And so a lot of his folks and followers will be joining us, and I hope you will too. And we'll be telling stories of hope and liberation and inspiration and redemption, and that's what we all need. So that's my prayer for all of us right now during this time of coronavirus, during this time of anxiety and insecurity and doubt. We should be able to open ourselves, to share Pesach, Passover, Pesach, the mouth that speaks, to open our mouth and speak words of consolation and inspiration, and to be able to receive those words of consolation and inspiration. And in that way, if we can all listen, if we can all open our hearts and hear, we will all find redemption no matter what's happening externally, right? We won't be slaves on the inside. That is the last of human freedoms, to choose one's way in any given to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way. That's Dr. Viktor Frankl. He said that coming out of the Holocaust. If he can say that in the Holocaust or coming out of the Holocaust, we can say that during the time of coronavirus. No matter what you were going through, there was always hope. Watch my video on that. That's the message. You can get it on my website under inspiration videos. I hope it does bring you hope. If it does, share it with others. Everything I'm doing right now, I'm just giving away, because I believe that that's what we should be doing right now, that those of us who can, and I feel privileged that I can, be given what I believe is inspiration to you so that you can share with others, and so on and so forth, paying it forward. And may we all soon know liberation, not only on the inside, but on the outside, so we get out of here and get back to our life. Chag Sameach, have a meaningful Passover. Happy Easter, even though I'll get back on the air before then, and have a celebration tonight of liberation, hope, and redemption. Take care. Shabbat Shalom, not Shabbat Shalom. What is it? Chag Sameach, happy Passover.